Welcome back to the show. This is Mike Kegley with Larry Smith, Brad Sturdy. We are very blessed today. CJ Moore of The Athletic is talking to us, and he is going to update us on his thoughts on what the Big Ten basketball side of the conference is going to look like in terms of who's been most effective in the offseason and what we can think of as the top tier in this league. And CJ, it's up to 18 teams now. When you were first starting to cover college basketball, did you think you'd be looking at the University of Washington trying to figure out how they were going to be doing in the Big Ten?
No, absolutely not. I was knowing I was coming on this interview, I was kind of taking a look at the league and where I had teams in my top 25 and I had to remember, oh yeah, UCLA, Big Ten team. So I don't think I ever would have thought something like that would happen. I frankly I think it's dumb. I mean, like geography should matter. We should have leagues where, the geography footprint matters. But here we are. It will be interesting. There it is. I think a wide open league and some depth to it, and we might have like a really surprise Big Ten champion next year. I try if you ask me to try to pick it right now, I think I had Purdue as the highest ranked Big Ten team, but I wouldn't feel like super comfortable with picking them as the preseason champ. I just think it's pretty wide open league.
You know, I look at this trying to figure out who has done best from a recruiting standpoint, and Rutgers comes out when you see the top heavy nature of their recruiting. How do you look at ranking those in the off season? Because having stud freshmen has not necessarily put Duke and
Yeah.
Kentucky in the championship game every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Rutgers is exciting and a very interesting team, but I would have some, I think in our initial top 25 that I do with Sam Vecini and Sam's probably more tied into what guys NBA potential is, and so maybe gets a little more excited about a team like Rutgers. And I try to get out on the circuit and watch kids almost every year. I'll be going to Peach Jam this year, but for whatever reason, I didn't see those guys they have coming in. So maybe I'm not as high on them just because I haven't seen those kids live. Maybe if I had seen those kids live, I'd be a little more prone to rank them. But when I redid the rankings after all the roster upheaval, I didn't have Rutgers in just because I feel like experience really really matters a lot, especially with this last year of COVID and having some really old kids in college basketball. So while I think Rutgers fans should be like really excited about what they have, I'm more prone probably to go with some more experienced teams and some teams that have like done it consistently year to year. Like, Illinois is going to be, we can talk more, I know we'll talk more about Illinois later, and they're going to be pretty dang young, but also, Illinois has been consistently good for a while now. So sometimes I give that kind of like I'm sure Ken Palm rankings do when they, when he does his preseason top 25, I know baked into there is program success, and I try to bake that into the way I think about it a little bit too.
So when you look at the offseason, were there any teams that jumped out to you that have demonstrated excellent roster construction, or at least on paper? Because obviously none of
Yeah.
this matters once the basketball start going into the hoops.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to me what Michigan did in terms of Dusty May's kind of vision for what he wants. Skill, shooting. Obviously, he wanted size. Like he didn't have size at Florida Atlantic, and that's something he really leaned into. They'll be huge. I don't know that they have shot creation worries. I'm a little bit worried about their shot creators and their backcourt, but I like what Dusty did in the portal, and it made sense to me. I think Brad Underwood was really intentional with how he wants to build rosters now and trying to continue to stick to that kind of blueprint. Big positional size, skill. You look at his last, like if you conclude this coming team in the last couple, there's been a real emphasis on how he wants to build his roster and sticking to that. So I like what they did. I thought UCLA had a pretty nice offseason, getting some guys, maybe some lesser known guys that are pretty good players, and I think can come in there and do well. Ohio State added a couple nice pieces. Indiana has some big names coming in. Miles Rice from Washington State, Omar Ballo from Arizona. They had some really high rated kids coming in. There's one where you worry a little bit about like what have they done the last couple of years? How, can Mike Woodson get this group together? They're going to be really, really big. Again, they've kind of leaned into that old school approach of playing through the post. Um, you know, I think it's got a chance to work, but we'll see. But I at least like some of the players they brought in. So those are the ones to me that stand out in terms of what they brought in and just kind of helping themselves. Um, making their rosters more complete. Nebraska too could be a sneaky one. I really like the freshman that was at UCLA, Burke. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his last name. That Nebraska got pretty late there. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite kids in the portal. Really, I think he really fits like a Fred Hoiberg type player. So, Nebraska might be sneaky too.
One thing that or two names that you didn't mention were Purdue and Michigan State. And I know those two coaches, Izzo and
Yeah.
Painter, are incredible coaches. Nobody's going to deny their coaching chops. They're trying to go about it a little bit less
Mhm.
externally from a roster construction standpoint. What are your thoughts on that? And how important are those two gentlemen in terms of making any plan work? They seem to have instant credibility because of what you talk about, the performance of their team over the years.
Yeah, I think that, with Purdue, there's a couple programs that have really, really leaned into development and just sticking with their guys and you've seen those programs not get hit by the portal the other way, right? Losing a bunch of guys and Purdue and Marquette kind of jump out to me as being those teams. And then also Houston, I think is kind of becoming that as well. I know for a fact, like they've leaned into, they've seen what Shaka's done at Marquette and kind of been influenced by him. Um, I've had conversations with them about that. So I think that's a kind of smart way to go about it sometimes when everybody else is, I mean, there's only so many portal kids, right? And it's only so many that are, there's a ton obviously, but there's only so many that'll really be impact, and it's
Yes.
hard to turn your roster over every year, and continuity matters. So like I said earlier, Purdue was the team I had ranked the highest because they got a lot coming back. I know they lose Zach Edey, but Braden Smith is a terrific player. They've got some really really good strong program kids coming back. So I think it's smart what they've done. And you look at Purdue like a year ago, they just felt like they needed like one more piece, and they went out and got themselves a veteran guard. Um, and Michigan State, I know they've got at least one kid coming in the portal. They got Frankie Fiddler. Do they didn't add anybody else, right? That was just the only portal kid, right?
Yep, Fiddler's the only one. And obviously, Coach Izzo has been pretty staunch about bringing in guys and developing them.
Yeah, and I think Frankie's like that's almost like a really good high school recruit that you get. He's been at a really small program at Omaha, but put up great numbers, um, and a big kid that can shoot it. You would think probably fit in the Big Ten. So I think they were intentional, and hey, like we could just use this one thing. Let's just go get it, and it doesn't really affect what else we have coming back. It fits around those guys, and you see those type of teams usually be able to retain a little bit better. So obviously Tom Izzo and Matt Painter know what they're doing, and I think that that's a model that also can work if you can pull it off and you can keep everybody happy.
Keeping everybody happy certainly is the hard thing. I wonder, do you think there's any chance, and you kind of talked about this at the beginning, do you think travel could actually wear these guys out come March when you're talking about now instead of Illinois driving to Purdue for a game, they're
Mhm.
in March, they're flying to UCLA. and all the travel that's involved. Do you think that could help some of these guys actually run into a wall like they do as rookies in the NBA?
Well, potentially. I mean, I think the 20, 21, 18, 19-year-old body is pretty resilient. They
Yeah.
they can bounce back pretty well. Um, I know when I try to play back-to-back days at almost 40, it's a little tougher, but I feel like they can figure it out. But thinking about I like UCLA, for instance, would be maybe a like if I were to going to Vegas and want to throw down some money on a Big Ten champ that was maybe had a little lower odds, like UCLA, I could see as a team that I might gamble on. But how are they going to handle like they could have they've never been like their home court advantage isn't awesome. Like it doesn't even compare to a lot of the Big Ten arenas, right? Um, but I could see them having like an awesome home record and a bad road record because they're going to have these long road trips and that is difficult. So there is some potential and especially the league schedule being so long and so you know last for forever and all these long road trips. Potentially you could see that, but I also kind of look at it as like usually these young kids are pretty resilient and so it happens sometimes where they hit a wall, but um I think eventually they get through it if they're trained the right way.
Do you have any dark horse candidates if you're gonna look as do you think it's gonna tier itself like maybe a top three or five? How do you look at this as you're way too early in the process here?
Yeah. Man, I mean, I think there's a group of like Purdue, Illinois, UCLA, maybe Ohio State, maybe Indiana, maybe Michigan, right there, like as a maybe the top tier, but it's so early. It's so hard to say. I mean, I think it's wide open. USC with Musselman coming in, will have like a brand new roster. Um, I always like ask me after 2 or 3 weeks of the season where I can actually get eyes on these teams because you never know how it's going to all come together. But at least when you do these preseason things, you try to envision like how do these pieces fit together? Does it actually make sense? This roster on the floor together. So, um, but yeah, it's. I mean, I'll stick with I guess Purdue is like that top team since that's what I have in my preseason rankings. But it's a crapshoot.
We really appreciate CJ Moore coming to us from The Athletic. Certainly, if you have an opportunity to go to The Athletic, if you're a sports fan, very few websites offer all the great writing that we see there. And I'd encourage you, if you like listening to CJ here, go to The Athletic. You'll get more of him. It's a fantastic opportunity to catch up on the latest in sports. CJ, thanks for coming on the show. And folks, right now, we have to go pay some bills. So we'll be right back after these messages.